Good morning, and welcome to day 6 of 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer. Yesterday, I left off the story of Samba the Coward, in which the people of the kingdom and the warriors were calling out for Samba to come lead the war party that would hopefully bring back the stolen sheep and goats. But Samba was nowhere to be found. His wife, the princess, began to look for him, and she found him in a cold, dark cellar where there were huge vase and pots with grain within them. And hiding behind one of these earthenware pots was Samba. He did have his armor on, but he was going to go nowhere. His wife tried with all of her words to try to inspire him to go do battle, even shaming him for his cowardice. But Samba would not budge. He was going to stay right where he was, safe and sound. And she finally resigned herself to that reality. Well, she turned to him, and her voice, seeming to come from some far off place, directed Samba to take off his armor. Samba did not disagree, did not put up an argument, but stood up and piece by piece began to take off the armor that was made for the son-in-law of the king. It was beautiful, inlaid with gold. And piece by piece, as Samba took off the armor, his wife put it on. And tying it into place with firm hands, she finished, took his sword, his helmet, and his spear, and mounted the stairs out of the cellar, and went out into the courtyard where all of the other warriors were waiting, and mounted the horse that was awaiting Samba. Now, Samba was tall, a big man, and fortunately, his wife, the princess, was tall as well. Not as tall as Samba, but still a tall woman. And though she did not rise up to the same stature that he did, with his suit of armor on, there weren't many or any that saw that it was her. She kept the visor of her helmet down, mounted the horse, and with a slight bow to all the people who were cheering her, or I guess rather him, Samba, she led the avenging party off to do battle with the Moors. The Moors were not expecting such a quick response and barely had time to put themselves in a battle array. Quickly, the skirmish was over, and they had sent the Moors on their way. They brought the sheep and the goats back, and loud were the cheers for Samba as they rode back into the kingdom. The princess quickly dismounted and made her way up through a back staircase to her own apartments. She opened the door, and there, laying on some cushions, was Samba. Samba did not quite know what to expect from his wife when she came in through the door, but he need not be afraid. She loved him, and she instructed him now to quickly put his armor back on. He was very agreeable, and did exactly what he was told, and she led him out onto the flat roof above the square in the city where all of the people had gathered and were shouting up their praises of Samba. Samba came to the edge of the roof where he could look down at the square, and the people's cheers and applause became even greater as they saw him standing there. And oh, the things that they said: Samba, the brave, the bravest of the brave. He has saved our city, and on and on. And they, commented how humble he was, and he gave a little wave and then turned and went back into their apartments. Well, it was only a few days before the Moors again came, this time to steal some cattle. They thought there was no way that the kingdom would be prepared and they wouldn't be expecting another attack so soon. Off they went with the cattle, and again the war drum was beaten. Now, I will tell you that when all of the warriors came back from the first fight and all of the cheering and the applause was going on, there was one prince, the son of the king, of which there were 3 sons, but the youngest son of the king had thought that maybe that wasn't Samba who had ridden out into battle. Secretly, he shared his beliefs with his brothers, who only scoffed at him and said, "Oh, there's no way. What are you thinking?" He had said, "Well, we will see. We will see who is right. In the next skirmish that we have, I will leave a mark on our commander, and we will see who is right." Well, in this next battle, the princess, Samba's wife, knew that Samba was not going to fight. She quickly put on the armor of Samba and went out into the square and mounted the horse that was waiting for her as before. She led the troops into battle, and this time the fighting was more intense than before. And in the thick of it, her younger brother came up and with his spear wounded her in the leg. So intense was the fighting and so engaged was she in the battle that she never even noticed, really, that this had happened. She hardly even felt the pain. And she went on fighting until the Moors were again caused to flee, and off they went. The Avengers returned the cattle. They rode back into the kingdom, and there the cheers went up again. The princess, as before, quickly dismounted and made her way up the stairs into her apartments, where Samba again was laying on the cushions. And she said, "I've been wounded. I've been wounded. You must wound yourself in the same place so nobody thinks that you were not there in the battle." Samba looked at her in disbelief. "Are you kidding? Why would I do such a foolish thing? I might as well have gone into battle myself than to think of wounding myself. Ah, that's just craziness." The princess might have expected such a response. And as soon as Samba's back was turned, she took his spear and wounded him in the leg, just as she had been. Samba yelled, but even before he could respond to his wife, the princess had gone out of the apartments in search of the kingdom's doctor. When she had found him, she said, "Quickly, quickly, you must come. My husband has been wounded in the battle, and he is faint from loss of blood." She made sure that her words were spoken loudly enough that more than just the doctor heard them. And throughout the rest of the day, people were pressing at the door of their apartment to see if Samba was okay. Well, the three princes, the sons of the king, met, and the older brothers turned to the younger and said, "See, we told you that that was Samba at the front. Now your worries can be put to rest." But the younger brother only shook his head and silently went on his way. Surprisingly, 2 days later, the Moors came again to steal another herd of sheep and goats. Again, the war drum was sounded and the warriors assembled in the courtyard. This time, the princess went to Samba and said, "My husband, I cannot go this time. My wound is so bad I can barely walk. There's no way that I will be able to get up into the horse by myself. You must ride today and do the work that must be done." Samba looked at her and said, "No, no, no. I will not be doing that." So the princess said, "Fine. Put on your armor and ride the horse outside the gate to the meeting point for the rest of the warriors. There I will meet you by a shorter way, and we will exchange places." Samba, who was very agreeable when no fear presented itself, quickly put on his armor, took up his sword, put on his helmet, took his spear, and went out and mounted his horse. He rode outside the gate, and there his wife was waiting for him. He was at the head of the troops, and when she came out, she had a whip in her hand, and she whipped the rump of Samba's horse. Samba's horse took off with a start, and all the rest of the warriors, they just galloped right in behind him. Samba tried to check his horse, but there was no way. With all of the galloping horses around him, his horse took no heed to the commands he was giving it through his reins. Within minutes, it seemed, they were in battle with the Moors, hand-to-hand combat. And a miracle happened. Samba began to fight. And when a big, strong man like that begins to fight, especially one who from a young age was trained to use sword and spear, amazing things happen. Samba quickly routed the Moors, and not only that, he vanquished the king. When he returned with the sword of the king of the Moors. The cheers were like none that had been before, for the people now knew that the Moors' king having been vanquished, there would be little chance that they would come and threaten them again. Well, the king came out and embraced Samba, and he was just delighted. He said, my son, what can I do to thank you? Just let me know. Let me know what it is that I can do. For you have done a great deed and a great service to me today." Samba looked directly into the eyes of the king, and he replied straightly and said, "My father, you should know, it is not I to whom praise should be given, but it is to your daughter, for it is she that has turned this coward of a man into a brave one." And this is the story of Samba the coward.